Hello and welcome to another episode. My name is Ross.
And I'm Craig.
And it's time to put the kettle on because it's tea time. Well, Craig, how's your week been? Is it all right?
It's been very nice, yeah.
You started. Coronavirus is coming back, isn't it? You've got it in Wales now. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's an achievement. We've unlocked 2 boroughs have been locked down. So yeah, it's getting fairly shady over here. Not as bad as England though. Here England is quite considerably worse.
We're not feeling it here particularly. Well, I mean, it's obviously going on all the time, but in the recent news, it's all been about all the cases seem to be in Wales at the moment and Scotland. So actually, England's doing all right for this week, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, so news has been a bit samey for me, going through my normal sources, but I will let you know what I've got.
Please fire away.
Right. Well, first of all, Hitachi ditches its UK nuclear power project.
Oh, Hitachi. Yes.
Yes. Hitachi, Japanese
company. They pulled out of Anglesey. We're talking about like coronavirus hitting Wales, and then Hitachi go and say, "Yeah, remember that thing we're building on Anglesey? Yeah, it's not going to happen anymore."
Yeah.
Even though we just signed a historic Brexit deal with Japan, and the Japanese company just goes and pulls out. Yeah.
Well, let me explain a little bit more then. So first of all, it's a 20 billion project in the. Am I pronouncing this right? Wilfenewith.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, in Wales, it was already suspended last year, but it's been completely axed, along with a similar project in Gloucestershire. The developer, Horizon Nuclear Power, which is owned by the Japanese conglomerate Hitachi, confirmed this morning that it was fully winding down all of its current development due to difficulties in securing additional investor partners. Tom Greatrex said that no electricity generation source has saved as much carbon as nuclear power has, and their only hopes now lie in long-awaited energy white paper the government has been saying they'll produce, and there is expected to publish in the coming months as to whether there is any way to re-energize these projects. So, do we like that? Do we not like that? I mean, how do you feel about nuclear?
I think it's a means to an end. I think we need this in order to get out of the current crisis we're in. Yeah, nuclear is potentially dangerous, but it's also very clean. And for where we want to get rid of coal burners, I think nuclear is the easiest option we have on the table right now. Renewably or not, that's just what we have. We should use it.
I doubt that the projects that they were doing are the most, because there are some technologies which are super clean, and actually I would probably support those completely anyway, even if we had solar and wind. I'm not sure exactly what they're going for, but yes, no, I would generally agree with that theory there. In other news, it's been the lost decade for nature. The RSPB accuses the UK government of missing majority of UN biodiversity targets. Becky Slate, the chief exec at the RSPB, stressed that the future nature targets must be made legally binding in order to prevent the ongoing loss of wildlife. Which is, I hear this a lot at the moment about making things legally binding, like that will solve everything.
Yeah, I mean, as if you've been keeping up with the Brexit news, we're apparently treading unlegal binding turf right now, and nobody seems to care. So I'm not really sure what that will change, but
makes it more controversial when they try and break it. That's all.
Yeah, I never heard of RSPB's aim on this, but I think it's generally been slammed as a massive failure. And it's not just the UK; the entire world has missed all its targets. So
well, I think the government claimed that it had. I think they had like 20 odd targets, and it claimed it had done 14 of them, but their report says no, you've done more like 7. So. Well done, UK. Done a good job again. Am I allowed to talk about this one? Only because it is kind of a big thing at the moment. It's not UK, sorry, but Lucid Motors. Can we talk about that?
I think so. I think if it's a cool bit of technology, we should share.
Thank you. Well, so did you see it? They have their announcement, their launch this week of the Lucid Air.
I haven't.
So it's another Tesla killer that's come along, but I kind of like it actually. It's obviously ridiculously priced, just like the Model S was to begin with. It's like 130,000 plus to buy the thing. They're starting with doing exactly the same thing as Tesla. They're starting with the most expensive, most luxurious one first, and then they'll slowly get it down further and further, further. But their announcement was basically this, beautifully put together marketing thingy with all that. You can just imagine the voice, the Lucid Air, all that sort of stuff, and it was all very artificial and nasty. But and I was kind of like, okay, it's a beautiful car, does look pretty cool, but and I suppose it's got 500-mile range, and it can charge faster than a Tesla, and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, fine, it sounds interesting, but let me see it and let's see what actually happens before I get too excited. What made me change my mind a little bit was when I understood where Lucid had come from. So Lucid was previously called Ativa, and they supplied all the electric power generation, what's it called? Powertrains, sorry, and battery technology for the Formula E series. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
I haven't.
It's actually it's a good series because it's electric cars. I think in the first season they had to have two cars. They did like half the race, and then they had to pull in because they ran out of battery, getting another car, and then rejoin the race. That's how it worked. So that was a bit rubbish. But by the second or third year, they sort of scrapped that, and they can now do the whole thing. But yeah, it's a very close sort of street circuit style racing, and they are whereas Formula One you can never get close enough to overtake each other. This is like, they're all literally going with this much gap between all of them. It's super fun, and they all smash into each other and stuff. But yeah, so they've been building the technology for that, which means that they have, through doing that, they've miniaturized their electric motor down a little bit, which means that they've enabled them to increase the amount of space that you've got in the car. Like they've got the biggest frunk of any electric car, and they've managed to change the shape of the car slightly to make the coefficient better, the drag coefficient, so that it's more efficient. So yeah, I actually think it might actually be as in, I could see why someone would choose the car. I would still favor Tesla, the fact that you've got the software is much, much better, and you've got obviously autopilot and things. But if I had to pick, if I had the kind of money to spend 130 odd plus thousand, and essentially your choice is the Model S, the Porsche Taycan, and not yet, but it will be the Lucid Air. I could see that would be a fair, which one do I go for? And if I wanted an exclusive car that everyone else has got, then yeah, I'd pick the Lucid Air.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Nope, I haven't heard about them. I haven't watched any Formula One really. They sound like a shoe brand, but sounds cool.
Okay. I'll let them know. Right. That was all I had. That was it.
Oh, kind of left me in sort of like anticipation for more there.
I know. Sorry, that was all I have. Lucid Air. That's what I've got.
That's cool ones. I got a few, so I'm just gonna quick fire through them. I think a lot of them are self-explanatory by the title, but let's begin. So based on the absolute climate nightmare of us failing biodiversity targets, there has been climate groups who proposed certain things the government should do going forward. Not only put things in law, but also tax frequent flyers and get rid of SUVs. So
get rid of SUVs.
Yes.
The most popular car type in Europe.
It's the most fashionable type right now, yeah. I mean, if they're electric, I assume that's fine. Or maybe they're trying to say get rid of, petrol and diesel SUVs. Those type.
Yeah, I know, but it's just, well, I mean, obviously I'm all for it, but it is the most bought type of vehicle, I believe, in Europe. So
Makes sense.
that would cause issues. But yeah, cool.
I mean, personally, I'm kind of, I get the fashion trend towards SUVs, but they're just very impractical for a lot of day-to-day life, especially in Wales where we have small streets. In the valleys where, you know, streets were built over 100 years ago for horse and cart, these SUVs they're just not working.
It's basically the equivalent of the American pickup truck thing, where you always feel like there might be that reason why one day you might need to put something in the back of the car. So it'd be useful to have one. You put the seats down in case you need to do that, or you know, what if I have friends over? Maybe so you end up with this space that you don't need 99% of the time for that one trip.
Yeah,
and the Americans do exactly the same thing with their pickups. Drive
yeah,
around.
that makes sense.
One day they might need to carry a fridge.
Yeah. Yeah. So, get rid of SUVs and tax frequent flyers. I think the frequent flyer thing kind of makes sense. I think we mentioned in the last couple of shows that only 4% of the world has even set foot on an airplane, which is a mad number. And some of those obviously fly a lot more than others. And tax those people because they are quite a big damage to the environment. Next piece of news. I'm not sure if you saw this one, but the UK's first EV-only service station. It is opening soon.
A service station? What does that mean? Sorry?
So, you know, your typical service station on the M4, got your Greggs, your Burger King.
All right.
However, electric vehicles only.
Cool.
So you can
I've been trying to think ever since the drive-through last week that we mentioned. I've been trying to think, you know, what else could you make which was EV only? And I don't know why really, but like I can see like someone doing like, you know, you got like disabled parking spaces nearest the building. Then next up maybe the EV only spaces because, well, they're closer to the restaurant or whatever it is, so therefore, you know, you're less likely to get the fumes. But I was wondering if there's other things like that where maybe there's a car parking area that only EVs can use because it's in the middle of the high street or something. Stuff like that. They're gonna happen. Well, they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think the service station is a good start. I suppose the shops on this place would cater directly to EV drivers who are a certain type of market demographic. I'm not really sure what you'd have there, really.
I don't really get the why. You know what the reason would be, what their theoretical excuse would be. Like if it was because they've got people around and they're parking in the middle of all these shops and stuff, then that makes sense. But if they're not doing that and it's just a park, you know, like normal, there's a car park outside and you walk into a mall, then I don't really see why you would exclude them other than just to make a point.
I think that's kind of what it is. It's kind of more of a novelty type stop. Just looking at photos of it, we should definitely share the article so you can look at this. It looks pretty cool. It looks all brand new, swanky. It's got a little plug on the side, you know, that type of thing. It's the type of thing when you're driving past them on the motorway and they pull off, you're kind of thinking, yeah, there's another one.
It's just going to make EVs seem like a bunch of dicks, I think.
It is, yeah.
There's no reason.
When you're slowly sipping, you know, your vegan shake when your car's charging. That's just the way it's going to be. Other than that, other electric car news, Scotland are offering £20,000 interest-free loan over 5 years to buy a second-hand EV. That's
20,
pretty cool.
000.
Yeah. So what could they get for 20k electric vehicle second-hand?
Well,
older Teslas. Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to. I'm assuming you can add on top of that if you want to.
Oh, of course, you got money. Yeah, this is a 20k interest-free five-year loan from the Scottish government. So
I haven't checked, but I would imagine you can pick up a Tesla for about 30 by now.
Second-hand, the second-hand market strong for Teslas.
I would think that at the moment the second-hand for threes, which is the one that's in that sort of price range, probably not much because I haven't checked, but there's a bigger market for S's and X's, but they started off at 100,000 to start with. So, you know, there might be 50, 60,000 by now, but not 30. But yeah, as Model 3s, second-hand Model 3s come on the market, then sure.
Cool. Okay. So that seems like a really cool thing. Only Scotland. mean,
Use it
fingers
to power
crossed.
my Cybertruck.
Fingers crossed. Wales come next because, as I've mentioned, I would like to join the EV revolution, but it's expensive.
Cybertruck.
Another piece of news: Microsoft, they basically put a small capsule. Well, I say small. It's a data center capsule into the sea off of Scotland again, and they've just brought it back up after 2 years to test its performance. And what they've learned is that
they should have sealed it.
What they've learned is basically that the servers react pretty well under sea. Obviously, controls the temperature in a very efficient way. They're saying this is now a really eco-efficient way to run big server farms. It basically put them in the sea, which is pretty cool. And they also saw, weirdly, a very low error rate, 1/8 of what we would normally see in a server farm. And they're attributing this primarily to oxygen that people breathe when they're walking around the server farm. These capsules were filled with nitrogen, which is more helpful to electronics and doesn't get rid of rust, for example, and any sort of oxidization, which can harm them. So people breathing causes issues. So putting server farms in the sea sounds like a good way. Nice eco-friendly thing that Microsoft has figured out.
And I appreciate you may not know the answer to this one, but if we're putting servers in the sea because they are hot and you want to cool them down, then surely if you put them in the sea, then that heat is then going into the water around. Yes. I thought increasing, I know that the sea is like a bank, if you like, a heat bank, but surely that's just making that problem worse.
I suppose it depends. I mean, the sea's got plenty of volcanoes. There's a lot of volcanic, action, and a lot of the heat doesn't ever get to the surface. And these capsules are fairly deep. I can't see how far deep they are, but yeah, not really sure, but deep.
As deep
as they can.
If it became like, they got bigger and bigger and bigger, there's more and more of them, then it's just more ways to heat the sea up, but this time from the bottom, not from the top. I don't know. It sounds like one of those things that later on they go, actually, do you know what? That was a bad idea.
Yeah, maybe. But let's bury more on the sea first to find out.
Yeah,
that seems what Microsoft's going to do at least.
At least they did a proper test.
Yeah, and in 2 years it looks good, so they might continue. Next piece of news: Google. What's Google been up to? Microsoft been burying stuff in the water, and Google's gone ahead and basically erased its entire carbon footprint that's ever created.
Okay, how did it do that?
Well, it's been carbon neutral since 2014, I think, and effectively it's now sort of backtracking on all the carbon it's ever created, and it's now got to zero. By offsetting. Offsetting is kind of cheating, but
well, yeah, what are they doing? Are they just buying credits, or are they planting trees? I mean, what are they?
Yeah, they're planting trees as well. I mean, again, this offsetting, so it's kind of cheating. Oh, sorry, 2007 they became carbon neutral, not 14, way early. And yeah, they're kind of laughing because Microsoft's idea is to get to carbon neutral by 2030, and they were already there, 23 years ago.
That's lovely, but it's not. But I think we just lost a bunch of forests in America. So if you could.
The wildfires.
Yeah, burns trees. He's replacing them.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem, there, isn't it? But yeah, Greenpeace think this is a great thing. They've commended Google for doing this, and it sets a new high bar for the sector. Oh. So let's see other companies follow that. Wales, onto some Welsh news. So there's a sustainable food packaging hub, which is now launching in Wales. And it's got investment from the Welsh government too. Again, as it kind of sounds, the idea is to make sustainable food packaging. Right now, they come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. Kind of what Loop are doing, they're trying to standardize that to make them recyclable. That could become a Wales-wide thing sooner rather than later.
I hope so. It annoys me.
It really does. Because I think we discussed previously as well, like certain plastics can't be recycled, some can. In Bridgend, where I live, they can't recycle black plastic specifically. Other plastics are typically okay.
That's okay. I mean,
So,
I'm all right with that. But like we've had some really weird rules. Well, basically, I again, let's make it a law, but then will that actually work? If it has the recycling logo on the packaging, it would be good if the councils were legally obliged to therefore recycle it, because there are some things that say recyclable and they don't recycle. So you put them in your thing and then they don't take them, or they reject the whole lot because it's got it in, and that's just stupid.
yeah, I mean, half the battle is going to be education, really. What's recyclable, what's not. Obviously, people still put silly things in with everything that could potentially be recycling. Yeah. And because we don't have the manpower to recycle things correctly on the street, the entire package just gets ignored, even though one thing could be wrong. So you have a perfect bag of recycled plastic, but accidentally there's a Snickers wrapper in there. Where'd that come from? Who knows?
Someone chucked it in as it walked past. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then they'll just reject the entire lot, which means, especially now, because in Bridgend where we alternate recycling and refuge, we have recycling 1 week, refuge the next week. All that plastic is now going to get black bagged. That's just what people do. They need to get rid of it, and it can't be sitting in the recycling bag, which they need for other recycling. So laziness takes over, unfortunately. Very.
We should do that idea of putting a microchip in it and then seeing where it goes.
Yes, we should. But talking of annoying, BP, they seem to be coming from annoying to now becoming the best friends of green. And they've joined the chorus for calling on early ban of petrol and diesel cars. BP, of all people, are saying, let's ban petrol and diesel cars.
I was going to mention them later, but yes, it's true. They're also funding some offshore wind farms in America, I think. Yeah, they look like they might actually be. I think they're also doing some partnership, I think, for electric car charging in their stations. I think they might actually generally be trying to do something good.
Fantastic. I should have mentioned that. I could have kept them as a perfect segue for you. But moving on, ever heard of an AI-powered ship? Like a boat ship?
An AI-powered ship or an AI-controlled ship?
Powered is the way they've worded it, but controlled is basically the same thing.
Yes, I have. I think there's one. I can't remember. I feel like it's somewhere on the east coast of the country. Some sort of fishing thing, maybe. I can't remember.
Well, not necessarily east coast. This guy called the Mayflower was an AI powered ship. Set sail this week for trials at sea. To basically try and do some environmental research missions. And it's completely AI-powered, and off it goes from Plymouth.
Oh, good old Plymouth.
So, yeah, nice bit of stuff there. I personally never heard of an AI-powered ship, so interesting to see how that works out. Well, also,
there's less obstacles. That's a good thing. It's self-driving without all the other cars.
Yeah, we kind of talk about all these electric vehicles, which are all pretty cool, like trains, cars, bikes. Kind of forget about the humble little ship that does most of the stuff around the world, really.
Well, so they're AI controlled, but they're also becoming electric. I didn't go into it because it's not UK news, but there is a company in America, in Chicago, I think, and they are pioneering or moving forward with their electric. What do you call them? Can't remember the name of them, but there's little small passenger boats, basically. Pontoon boats, I think it's called pontoon boats.
Okay.
So that's becoming a thing too.
Nice.
Electric boats. It's going to take a while if we get anything large, like a ferry or anything, but yeah, it's a start.
Yeah, I mean, I'd assume ferries are already quite electric in a sense. But, okay, that's cool. Other news, authorities, they have this week charged, well, first of all, do you remember the fatal self-driving crash that happened? a few years back. Let me get the exact date.
Which
2018.
the
It's the
Apple?
only one. The very first one, Uber.
Oh, there was something
It's the
recently
first
about
time.
that, wasn't
Well, this one is 2018. Is the first one ever, and it was an Uber self-driving car that killed someone.
Right.
And this week they've now basically charged the backup driver, so the guy who's in the passenger seat. They've charged him with dangerous driving and manslaughter, I believe.
Right. Yes, I think I saw that.
Yeah, so he's been charged. Oh, with negligent homicide. So, yeah, that's not very good for him. I mean, quite horrific, really. But it's the first of his case and the first of his kind. So it's interesting how they go.
What car was it? Do you know? Was it actually
I
run by
don't.
Uber, or is it?
It's part of Uber's self-driving stuff. So the actual car itself, not sure.
But presumably he was supposed to monitor it and make sure it did its job, and then he didn't. as he's being given negligible manslaughter, that's essentially what they're saying, isn't it? You were supposed to look after it.
Yes, basically.
But he's
correct the usage of he is also a she. She's been arrested.
Oh, is it? Sorry, I thought he said. I thought it was a guy.
I think I did say he.
Oh.
But yeah, it seems that she was using her phone at the time, even though she says she doesn't. But the camera shows that she might have been fibbing.
Fibbing. That's a very nice way of saying she killed someone. I'm not sure we can say we're fibbing. I think we should go with lying.
Yeah, so she's been charged, sentencing, and how long it'll be for would be decided 11th of February 2021. So, bit of time. Not really sure how they can do that. It's quite a hard one, really. But that kind of sets the standard for what can happen if you accidentally kill someone while, in a self-driving car. Before we were kind of discussing who gets the blame, and it seems like maybe you would.
Which, as it stands, that's right. As it's no one's saying that these cars are fully self-driving yet. Until that day happens, then it should be the driver's fault because their responsibility to look after the damn car. Obviously, it's short of it accelerating outside of their control, whatever, that sort of thing, and he's unable to stop it, then he's able to stop it, then he should be able to. Yeah.
That moves on to another piece of fun news. In Coventry, where another e-scooter trial has been put on hold indefinitely because people are taking the pee. So this is the second one we've discussed. And yeah, I mean, this doesn't seem to be going really well in the trial in the UK. Some person has branded it as hell on wheels, having kids on mopeds.
Sounds like a cool brand name, but
yeah.
Well,
yeah,
well done. Sorry, Coventry.
Yeah. Coventry.
Yeah.
Well, not going well. Not going well.
Was it the youths again?
It doesn't say. Like the last time, they were chasing like nans in supermarkets and stuff, but I don't think it was that bad this time. It's more of like skipping red lights, riding on pavements, ignoring cycle lanes. Very not so bad things, but it's kind of showing perhaps the ignorance and naivety of people who just don't understand what scooters are.
But wait, remember last time? Was it London? Wherever it was last time, we pointed out that before the trial started, it said that they were supposed to have driving licenses or something.
Yes.
Before they were able to use the scooter. It turned out that they didn't have driver licenses because they were most of them teenagers anyway. So did they correct it for Coventry, or were they also non-driver license people who don't care about or don't even know what the road rules are?
I'm not sure actually.
I guess
doesn't actually seem to suggest that. Maybe. I think this was a different company, so maybe they've just learned a different lesson. But Yeah, so this is about damnation on the scheme in Thailand, and the Campaigner for National Federation of the Blind says this is one of the worst things she's ever seen, and can't wait for e-scooters to disappear from the UK.
I know it's an inappropriate jog, but it's just funny for the. You know what I'm saying. Oh, dear.
I mean, yeah, electric vehicles in general must be quite a hindrance for blind people. That you
I mean,
can't hear them.
I don't want to take away at all from the genuine fear they must have. It's just funny to hear anyone from the Blind Association saying anything that was the worst thing they've ever seen.
Fair enough. Yeah. Case in point. The final piece of news, which is not really fitting into our sustainability sort of news chorus, but I wanted to share this one anyway. And it's that we've recently, this week, found signs of alien life on Venus. Now, you must have seen this.
I haven't. No. I was also too focused on the sustainability news and not on just random things about planets.
How is it a random thing? We potentially found aliens. That's a bloody good thing.
I mean, it's a bit, well, sure, but absolutely. But it's maybe we should put it on a different show about.
Maybe I just wanted to talk about it because, like, I don't know. For me, it kind of puts a lot of things in perspective. That's, you know, we've got a really ideal world here. We seem to be destroying it. Venus is a destroyed world. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that Venus was like Earth back in the day. Maybe
some people even say that we came from Venus.
Ago. Maybe we did. Maybe
anyway,
we did.
What they found?
So this was a plume of. Let me find the exact science of it. It was a plume they found basically at the planet's atmosphere, which seems to suggest it's the type of thing that happens when microorganisms die. So they were able to determine perhaps there are microorganisms like bacteria, maybe there's nothing like little green men, but bacteria could be living in the clouds of Venus and somehow evolved from the surface back when it was habitable to live now perhaps in the clouds. And so it could be very, very small microorganisms. And it was phosphine gas that was recorded.
Oh. What microorganisms do you know of, maybe you don't know any, live in our skies, clouds?
I don't think there are any, but we do have microorganisms that live on the basis of volcanoes. And
does it maybe live in the water that's in the clouds? That would be the rain. Do they? Because surely, okay, fine.
Very potentially, but I don't think there are water in the clouds of Venus. They're different chemicals, so they are very much a different organism we don't understand. And obviously, the next idea would be to go and have a look.
Yeah. I think
weirdly,
I'm going to provide you a link of saying it's sustainability news because we can't live here forever. So, you know, venturing outside is part of the sustainability spectrum.
I think so. And we've discussed Mars, so let's give Venus a fair shout.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the average temperature is 464 degrees Celsius. So we're never going to go there. But
I'd run out of speculation too quickly.
So, sort of as a viable planet that human life could have perhaps lived on 4 billion years ago, and now it's just an inferno. We could see the way we could be going if we keep this up. And on that news, what's today's topic?
All right. Well, today's topic is, we've touched on it a couple of times, but I wanted to go full in depth, you know, as in depth as we go on this show, into investing, and investing specifically in the future that we want to see. That is my topic of the day. It's a personal topic, a bit like when I did the plant first diet. It's another personal thing that I'm doing. So I've got some information for you, which I'm going to share. So I've been investing for about 18 months to 2 years now. And I had never done it before.
Maybe specify investing first of all. You mean financial investing, not anything else. So putting money into an investing stock market.
Yes. So I've been investing in the stock market. I've been buying shares of companies that are real and exist. And I've been putting my savings into those companies for them to spend it as they wish, and then for me to get a return via a price increase of the share price. Now, it's something that historically was very, very hard to do. You needed to have a broker. That sounded scary all by itself. And like if you wanted to make a trade, you'd have to call up your broker, and that's where the whole sort of buy, sell thing. Because people would call them up in a panic and they're watching it dive. Go, please sell my shares now. So that was the old way of doing things. But obviously nowadays we have phones, and on phones we have apps, and apps can now do them instantaneously. And in the last few years, at least, there's been an increase of apps that allow you to do that for free, because that's the other thing. Back when I did look into investing about maybe 5 or 10 years ago, because my friend was doing it, and I thought, what is this weird phenomenon? So I did get a trading account. I can't remember where it was now, but I remember it being costing £25 to buy anything and £25 to sell anything. And that made it kind of like, well, I need to be absolutely sure about what I'm doing, because if I make a mistake, it's going to cost me 50 quid. Do you know what I mean? So, and at the time I was thinking of putting, hundreds of pounds in, not thousands. I didn't have thousands. So I was just trying to start with something small, maybe grow it. And I thought, well, actually, just to make 25 quid is like, if you had, let's say, £1,000, it's going to be in the region of about 2 or 3% increase just before you've even broken even. So it was all very not something that you want to do. So anyway, that's all changed. Investing has now become a thing that everyone can do, and it's created a bit of a trend at the minute. Certainly, it's increased a lot in the last year, since the government have been paying out checks to the US citizens. There has been a massive increase in America. So they've got their trading platforms called Robinhood and Robinhood and Webull, which are the most popular ones. But it seems lots of people have been taking money that they've got from there and then putting it into the stock market, because when the pandemic hit, we had a massive crash, and everyone thought, well, you've got President Trump telling me it's going to be over soon. So I keep hearing on the news the market's crash. I'll just take $1,000 and I'll put it on there, and it'll probably come back up soon, and I'll make more money that way rather than putting it into my bank account. So it's created a bit of a trend with that. People like you and me are called retail investors. Not entirely sure why, but we're not like big corporates or whatever. We're normal people who just have a bit of money and we chuck it in.
Peasants.
Yeah, peasants investing like morons. So it's a trend, but it's a little bit dangerous, because obviously a lot of people are stupid, Craig, to be honest with you. They don't know what they're doing, and they don't actually spend any attempts to actually try and work out what they're doing. So they'll literally hear that there's been some crazy stocks where, like, I think Kodak was one of them. And there was another company that was going bust. Well, basically, for some bizarre reason, everyone decided to, because it was basically plummeting, people thought, well, stocks always go up. That's just been the thing. Stocks go up. They were going up every day during the pandemic, and no one really understood why. So they were just chucking money at these companies that had gone down, no regard to whether or not they'd actually, whether the company was doing well, what their earnings was last year or anything. They just chucked money in and assumed that it would fix. So we had these companies that were going bankrupt. They were literally telling everyone, we're screwed, we're going to go out of business. And they were still going, chuck in some more money. And there's been some really weird situations. There's a guy called like a chat room millionaire or something, who started talking about how, the stock market is not as complicated as people make it out to be. It's easy. Just do what I do. I made £1 million, and he possibly didn't make £1 million because some, if you had a fair bit of money to stick in, some stocks have gone up by some ridiculous hundreds of percents in the last few months. And it's entirely plausible that if you had a reasonable sum to start with, you could suddenly become a millionaire. All this has been going on, and that's the current sort of new fun thing to do. But obviously, if you want to do it sensibly, you need to bear some things in mind. They always say that you should only invest what you're prepared to lose, which is true. But I also think it's like, that makes it sound like you're likely, even half likely, to lose everything, and you're not half likely to lose everything, because in order to lose everything, the company that you've invested in has to actually go bust. So if you invested in someone like Apple or Google or Facebook or one of the sort of common ones, then that company has to go bust for you to lose all your money. So it's not so much necessarily don't only put what you're prepared to lose. It is, but it's more, if you lost everything, it's unlikely, but could you live with it? Could you work around it? Would it devastate your family if that happened? Because you've had all sorts of stories over the years where pensions have disappeared, and certain stocks that people have their grandparents have had that they've not paid attention to, and then they've inherited it, looked at it and gone, oh pants, it's some company that's Kodak or something that's been dying for the past 30 years. It's more about what you could live without if it went horribly wrong. But even then, I would still say the probability of you losing everything is very, very low. The probability of you losing some is reasonably high. So there are different types of investing. Now I know you invest, Craig, so you do what we call passive investing, and I do what we call active investing. And the difference between the two, for everybody else's sake, not yours, is that basically the idea is that if passive means that you don't do anything, I just put the money into a fund and then I leave it alone. I don't have to worry about it. Whereas active simply means that you have to do a bit more. But in reality, if you're a lot of the people that I listen to in terms of investor who are trying to give advice, even though it's not financial advice, because we're not allowed to, always say that actually the best thing to do is to put your money in the stocks and then leave it alone. Don't do anything. And actually obsessing over it and watching it is what causes most of the problems. And I can testament that is true, because I've had the last 18 months to 2 years to learn it. And I've spent the first 6 to 12 months learning that actually, if I just left it alone, I probably would have made more money. But you kind of can't help yourself when you're getting into it, because you want to play with it. Oh, it's gone down. Maybe I should sell it. Yeah, that sort of stuff. So you learn all that sort of thing, and then it ultimately comes back to the end that they were all right. So just take my word for it. You find a decent place to put it, and then you just leave it alone. But what you do is passive. Active is what I do. Ultimately, what it comes down to is that if you're going for passive, you're giving someone else permission to choose the companies that you're going to invest in. And all they do is they'll pick, let's say, what's the S&P 500 is a list of 500 companies in America that are all doing pretty well. There's also the NASDAQ. They're usually tech companies. There's also the Dow. I'm not even sure what's in them. Just old boring companies. No one cares about them. Anyway, all they do is
FTSE.
What's sorry?
Don't forget the FTSE, the UK one.
Oh yeah, the FTSE one. Oh yeah, that too. The FTSE 100, FTSE 250. They're just basically lists of companies that are listed that way because of because with a NASDAQ's case, it's because of the type of company it is. In the FTSE 100 and FTSE 250, it's just because it's the top 100 companies or the top 250 companies based on their market cap, which is basically just the total value of the company. So the bigger the company, the higher up it is in the index. And all they do is they distribute it. So they take all the market caps of the top 100 and they'll say, right, well, number one is like 20% of the whole market. It's huge. So I'll put 20% of your money into that one. And then the next one down is only 16%. So I'll put 16% of money in that one, and then all the way down. And all they do is literally diversify it. They have no idea, if you like, what the companies are. It doesn't matter. They don't care. They just go, they're the top 100 companies. I'll just put my money in, which on the one hand, means that you're diversified across the whole of the UK, and the FTSE's case, the whole of the UK's market. But on the other hand, you could have your money invested in companies that you really wouldn't want to put your money into, or companies that you know are big now, but are probably not going to be that good in the future.
Mm.
But passive is considered to be the safer option. I'm not convinced that it is, because actually, from my perspective, if I was to look at some of the big companies in there, some of them are, big oil companies or big banks and insurance companies and things that are getting slowly disrupted by other technologies. For me, that doesn't feel that safe to me. It's safe in terms of, if you look at the years over years and years of the returns, then it's always done reasonably well. It's less choppy, but actually, if you think about where we're going in the next 5-10 years, I would argue that's not as safe as it is if I was to go, right, well, what companies do I know about? And you can still diversify. You can still have 250 companies in your portfolio if you want to, but you can choose 250 companies that you think are doing reasonably well, and you can chuck out the ones that you think that's on the way out. Ultimately, it comes down to risk versus reward. So that's, if you have a broad spectrum, then you have a lower risk theoretically. Again, don't think that's necessarily true, but your rewards are also lower. Whereas if you said, okay, well, I'm going to pick these 4 companies and they're big growth, new, amazing companies that are doing cool stuff, then obviously if any one of those 4 companies does badly, you can lose your money. But on the plus side, if it does grow, you're going to get way more back money wise in return. Okay, so you've got choices as to, even when you invest in a, let's say, it's called an index or an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund, I think it's called. Basically, it's just that distribution. You can choose to go from all sorts of. You can choose to invest in the whole country, the whole world if you want to, a global all cap thing, which basically says, let's take the entire developed world and we will pick all the decent companies across all the different countries, and we'll just invest some money in each of those. Now, it doesn't matter whether the US is having a bigger spike in the pandemic, or the UKSR, or there's some sort of issue with Brexit. It doesn't matter, because you're more distributed. So you could do that, or you could go, actually, no, I don't. I'm going to just stick to the UK, perhaps, and you can narrow it down to just the UK companies. Or you can go further down. You can say, actually, I'm just interested in the health sector, or I'm just interested in the energy sector. You can even get ETFs which go like right down to stuff like vegan companies, if you really wanted to. That's something you can find. Yeah, you can find index funds that are specifically focus on sustainability and green technology, or ultimately it's going to be, again, someone else thinking these companies are putting their effort into veganism, or whatever the thing is that's motivating you to do it, and you will find one that there's usually just pretty much something for everything. So you've got choices there, but again, ultimately all they're doing is they're choosing those companies for you. So going back to the idea of the global one, there's one called the URTH, the URTH, and that's like I said, it's a global index fund, and essentially the entire developed world is wrapped up into that one single fund. And even during the pandemic, year on year to date, the price of the URTH fund has increased about 10%. And on top of that, you also get dividends. So dividends is a whole different thing.
Nice.
So when you invest in either a company or a fund, it may or may not, depending on the company, give you dividends as well. So let's say the price for a single share was 100 quid. You could buy that share for £100, and then over the next year, in this case, it's now £110. So the amount of money you've put in has already gone up by 10% anyway. But on top of that, every quarter, you may get something like, I don't know, a £5 dividend payout from that as well. So you can collect those extra £5 as well. Probably less than that, but that's how it works. So you can then take those dividends, then you can either keep those dividends, and you can use that to, well, with £100 you wouldn't go very far, but if you had much more money in, then you could actually live off those dividends, or you can just take those dividends and just reinvest it straight back in, so that it just adds to your value of the total stock that you own. I did say that it was $100 stock with funds. It doesn't really work like that. You just put in whatever you've got. So if you've got, you know, £167, it doesn't matter. You can buy £167 worth of stock, and it just takes whatever you've got and works with that.
Just a quick point on, because you said you can live off it. That's exactly what the FIRE movement and method is all about. So financial independence, retire early, as we previously discussed. It's all about putting your money in the stock market, and ideally in passive global all cap bonds that you can just sit there, leave 10, 15 years and live off it.
So 4%?
Yeah. Draw down 4% every year. So you meant to have 25%, 25 times your yearly expenditure, put that into account. Once you have that number, draw 4% every year. They should always grow by at least 5 to 7 is the estimated passive growth rate. And basically you should never run out of money. That's the idea.
So there are different within investing, and I don't get too complicated because it makes you feel like it's too hard, but it really isn't. There are different types of investing. So you can be a growth investor, or you can be a dividend investor, or you can be a value investor. There are different ways. And essentially, all they are is just it's the companies that you're choosing to invest in. So if you're a growth investor, for example, then you're looking at smaller companies who are one company that I'm invested in is Slack. So you'll know them as a software company. It's a small company, but they make this thing which basically replaces email, and it's definitely a growth stock because they've only been on the market for about a year. They haven't actually turned a profit, I don't think, yet. So that would be an example of a growth stock where, you know, it's something that you may expect to do well over the years. At the moment, it's not there, so the price reflects the fact that it's not making any profit. What it means is that hopefully, if you put your money into that stock, it might, over the next few years, it might double, triple, quadruple, and that's where you're making your money. So that's your growth investor strategy. Whereas the dividend investor strategy would pick much larger companies, generally people like Coca-Cola or PepsiCo or those sort of companies, and they pay the dividends a decent dividend out. Like Disney, I think, is another quite popular one for dividend stocks. So you put all the money into there, and then you don't get much price increase. The price, you know, bubbles along a little bit, but it doesn't really change. But what you do get is your dividend out. So then, yes, you take your 4%, and then, but obviously you need a fair bit of money to do that. Was it 25 times your earnings? So
yeah, 25 years expenditure.
So what people often do is when they're starting out, they'll start with a growth strategy, higher risk, but you get your much bigger returns. And then over time, as the money increases, they will take a proportion of their overall fund, and then they will push that into dividend stocks so that they keep replenishing a little bit until eventually they can do that. And when they're much older, they probably just have dividend stocks, and then they live off the returns. So yes, as I was saying, even the URTH, that global one, has increased 10%, and that's during the pandemic, and that's, I mean, it's been the weirdest year ever, and yet it's still gone up by 10%. So it shows you that we haven't had a year like this in many years. So even in one of the worst trading years imaginable, even though we're now at silly highs again, that whole fluctuation that people worry about losing all their money, what actually happens is that you put the money in, weird stuff happens, and it will one day drop down by 30%, and you'll be like, oh, that's terrifying. But obviously, if you didn't pay any attention, if you looked at it last September and you looked at it now, you'd go, oh, it's gone up by 10%. Cool. And that's it. Which is why.
How do you see that dip, though? Because I mean, it depends how you see it as well, of how, you know, optimistic or pessimistic investor. Like, optimistically, that's a 30% reduction. It's just 30% cheaper to buy more stock.
Yeah. So if you're a regular trader, then that's how they see it. They go, oh, great. The thing it's more applicable really that to active, you know, for real companies, but you could certainly do it with passive too, where you can go, oh, actually, it's gone down by 30%. Awesome. That's probably not normal. So I might take the opportunity to take my discount and buy some more.
Yeah. I think I would say it's more passive personally, in the sense of you have a lot more faith that it's gone down 30%, but that it can't go bankrupt because it's a portfolio of stuff. So you can't ever lose by doing that. The money will come back given enough time. I think active, you're taking more of a risk because Apple went down 30%. They're probably not going to go bankrupt, but you never really know.
Right, but okay, so you take those big safe global index funds, and then if you look at what the companies they're invested in, this is my point, is that ultimately comes down to that. Okay, some other managed funds will separate. Some of them are stocks, some of them are property, some of it's bonds, some of it's gold, things like that, and they will distribute it out, and these are arguably much safer. But for the ETFs that just separate them to essentially pick out those 100 companies or whatever it is for you, you could do that yourself. You might not know what to pick, but it would be no different than you choosing those exact companies yourself and then having a portfolio that was that big. When you dive into what those ETFs actually buy, that's for me where it gets a little bit because that's the whole point of this conversation was about investing in the future that you want. So if I was to buy a safe global index fund, that means I've put money into companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, Royal Dutch Shell, and BP, which up until recently, I don't want to say anything against those companies. I do actually. But let's just say they don't have particularly high green credentials. They're not companies that you would think, yes, I want my money in them. That's what I want to use my money for. And that's where for me, and if we believe that electrification is happening and these companies are in trouble, do I really want my money in there? Because one day they might just turn around and say, actually, we're screwed. And so that percentage of your portfolio will drop. Now, sure, that might only be 14% of the portfolio and it will take a drop because of that. But if you've got something as disruptive as electrification and all the gas companies are starting to struggle, if those ETFs don't update themselves and they don't take the money out of that and put them into other technologies because they can't, because as far as we know, it's still the highest market cap until something goes horribly wrong, then you are gonna suffer because of that. Now, if you've got the foresight to go, I don't think they're going to do very well, then you could have just saved yourself that bother, not had that loss, and put your money into something that you thought was more likely to do well and is better for the world in general.
That's fair.
So there's another. So you can choose ETFs, like I said, which are tailored to specific things. So I'm going to give you a couple. One is called. So every stock has what's called a ticker symbol, which is just an abbreviation of letters, so that you can help find it on the stock market. You just type in those letters on Google, and it will tell you what the price is. I always literally put the symbol and then share price, and then boom, Google tells me everything I need to know. So one of them is called ICLN, which is the iShares Clean Energy ETF, and it's invested in the largest solar companies in the US, as well as utility companies in Austria and all over the world. It has a similar dividend yield to the global one I mentioned, but this time all your money is invested in renewable and that sort of area. If you had invested in there, your share price alone has gone up over 55% in the last 12 months. And that's an ETF. Actually, for me, that's so high, I'd always be slightly worried because you don't expect it to go that much. It's almost worrying if it does. But that's one. It's invested in the right sort of companies. The US have obviously got a bigger rise in solar and stuff at the moment, so that's probably what's caused it. But yeah, 55% in a year for an ETF is, considering you're going for 5 to 7, is amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe you'd like to narrow it down to the UK. We're a UK thingy, so let's pick some UK ones. There's the UKSR that invests in 162 London Stock Exchange companies. All of which, renewable energy, that sort of thing. There's TRIG, which is the Renewables Infrastructure Group. Again, solar, wind, invest in over 70 of them across the UK and Europe. There's a Legal and General's Future World Fund. They invest in companies which are less carbon intensive or earn green revenues. That's their definition of what is allowed to go in. And yeah, so there are ETFs for all sorts of things, and I haven't got the numbers of the percentages for all of them, but you can go and find whatever you want, basically.
The argument is that perhaps right now the growth is smaller than perhaps all the companies, but you are making a difference by investing in them because they will grow and they're doing better for the world. So
yeah,
it's a win-win.
It is. Okay, so so we talked about ETFs. We talked about whether it's going from global, whether it's going to the country, whether it's going to a particular sector. But you can also ultimately go right down to the bottom level and pick the actual individual company that you think is doing what you want it to do. So I looked into that one a bit more as well. In the UK, we don't have the Robinhood and Webull app. In the UK, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of choice at the moment. I currently use Trading 212 because they provide free investments. There are many other platforms, but I haven't found as many that do the 0% commission. Robinhood is supposed to be coming to the UK, but they scrapped their plans to do that. So that will probably happen at some point, but not yet. But if you have a Trading 212 app, basically it's a phone app. You can just go in there and you can look up the companies, type them in. You'll see, check them out on Google, see what their financial records are. There's a website which is really, really good, especially if it's sort of new tech companies and renewable energy companies and people that are trying to do the good things in the world. It's called HyperCharts.co. It's run by a guy called Gally, American guy who is a bit of a nerd. He speaks really fast, probably a bit like me, and he's very in depth. He gets very excited. He's basically quite a young guy. He's a very excitable man, but he's very good at doing his research. And he's got his own company called Hyperchange, and he produces his own charts. But it's actually really, really good because it breaks everything down for you, shows you all the financials. Essentially, that at the very least you should do before you buy any company is to go, are they making money? Has the revenue been going up recently? That sort of basic stuff before you just go, yeah, chuck some money. In that world, you decide what companies you want to invest in, and if your broker allows it, so in my case, Trading 212 is my broker. If they allow me to invest in it, then I can put the money in it, and it's that simple. So if there are companies that you admire, the chances are you'll unintentionally keep up with them anyway, with just news. So I'm a bit of a Tesla fanboy, so I know about Tesla stuff happening all the time. Even if I didn't look at the stock market, I would still roughly know what's going on with them. So it's short of anything going horribly wrong, like start hearing that they might go bust or whatever. There's no reason to go look at the stock price because it's probably fine. And Tesla, it definitely would have been. So let's take Tesla as the example. If you invested £1,000 in Tesla 5 years ago, yeah, want to guess? How much would you have now?
£1,000 5 years ago.
Yeah.
£120,000.
Okay, no. No.
I don't know. I feel like they've 1,000%ed somewhere.
Right. No, they've 800%. So you're going to be disappointed now. Your £1,000 has now become £8,500, which
my maths were wrong.
But that's in 5 years. Weirdly, with Tesla, if you put £1,000 in a year ago, you'd still have £8,500 because for 4 years it didn't do anything. It was just basically flatlined the entire time. But yeah, so if you put in 1 year ago, £1,000 a year ago, you'd now have £8,500. That's just insane. Obviously, that's not normal either. I don't think there's ever been a stock like Tesla. But But if we take a more general approach. So I contemplated, what if you, coming into this, you don't know any companies, but you want to invest in good, sustainable businesses. How would you find out what companies to invest in? So there's a list of the top one. You can just Google it. What's the top 100 sustainable companies, and you will come across a list that's produced by a company called Corporate Knights, who claim to be the voice for clean capital. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. The voice for clean capitalism. They publish a list every year of the top 100 companies, which are called the Global 100, and it's derived by sifting through 3.7 million data points, and it takes 5,000 hours of work to do so, to eventually come to determine the most sustainable companies. Although weirdly, Tesla number 69 on the list. So I'm guessing done by whether the company itself is sustainable, not necessarily the impact of sustainability that they are having. Because you could argue that Tesla at the minute, their lithium, cobalt, all that sort of stuff, are they themselves the most sustainable? I don't know. I don't know what their data points are, but just to give you that in context, I would say at the moment Tesla are probably doing the most sustainability. They think that they are only number 69.
I suppose they have the most sustainable potential, but not quite there yet. Is Google on that list, given now the carbon zero?
I don't know the full list of the 100. I think they are on the list. I can't remember exactly what number it is though. I think they were higher up than Tesla, but I'll put a little note when I find out later on.
Yeah. Just another quick question, Matt. Can you get an ETF of all those 100?
No, I don't believe so. No, I don't. But that's what I mean. So someone's just come up with a list of 100. As far as I know, no one's created an ETF for that list of 100. But if you just invested in those 100, you would have your own ETF, effectively. Same diff. So I thought, okay, well, let's just say I came across this list and I just looked at the top 3, and then I will invest money in it, and then I will wait 5 years and I'll have a look. Because any investment that you make in the stock market, you should be thinking around a 5-year time frame. Not, you shouldn't be expecting to get returns back in a month. It's somewhere where you put your savings when you don't need them, and then you come back to it 5 years later and go, right, now I'm going to buy something with it. So I took each company and I looked at it for 5 years. So the first company was Christian Hansen. They're a sustainable agricultural company, working with stuff I didn't really understand, to be honest with you. But you can look them up if you want to look. But yeah, they are supposedly the number 1 sustainable company. They do stuff with something or other to do with agriculture. If you bought their stock 5 years ago, you would have doubled your money by now. It's not a Tesla, but if you put £1,000 in, you'd have £2,000 5 years later. The second one on the list was a company called Kering. They're a sustainable fashion luxury. They have brands like Gucci and Saint Laurent, or whatever it's called, Saint Laurent. So they make leather goods, watches, jewelry, stuff like that. If you bought their stock 5 years ago, you would have quadrupled your money by now.
I feel that's Jessica Alba's company. I'm not sure.
The what company, sorry?
I believe it's Jessica Alba's company. I'm not sure. She'll launch something like that. You can continue and I shall search.
Okay. That company was a company called Neste, or Neste. They're an energy company that works in renewable fuels and recycled plastics. So again, if you bought their stock 5 years ago, you increased your money by 600%. And that's just the top 3. Nice. And there's no link between that list and stock investing. They're not the top 3 that you should invest in that someone else has done. They've just worked out on purely other data points. But I've just taken those top 3 and said, right, well, what happens if I invest in those for 5 years? Well, that's what's happened. So maybe you decide to be safe and you rather than buying any one of those companies, you split your 333.33 pence to each one, and do it that way for 5 years. If you did that, that would have been the safer approach. You would have made, well, your £1,000 would now be £4,000, because one was a double, one was a quadruple, and the other one was a six. Average it out, and it works out 4 times. So you'd have 4,000 quid. So you've made £3,000. Okay. The alternative to that, what most people do, is they put that £1,000 in the bank. So if you put it in a bank, chances are you would have made, drum roll please, £64.
64. That's surprisingly higher than I would have thought.
3,064, except you haven't made 64, Craig, because we haven't taken into account inflation.
Yeah.
During those 5 years, the average interest rate in a bank account was 1.24%. The average rate of inflation was 1.59%. So, for those that don't know, if inflation reduces the value or the buying power of your money. So if you have £1,000 in 2015, you can buy less with it in 2020. So even though you made £64, you lost about 70 something. I didn't work out that number, but you ultimately lost, because of the difference between 1.24 on the way up and 1.59 on the way down. You actually lost money.
Yeah.
Make £3,000 or lose 20 quid. Just stupid. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know why we don't all know to do that. I don't know, because I didn't know this 2 years ago. I don't know why it's not, teaching schools or something. Do you know what I mean? It's just irritating that. So I've been trying to convince my entire family to sort of change how they deal with their finances, and including my mum, and she would keep coming back with stuff like, oh, well, I want to keep it in a bank because I think I'm going to use it soon. And it's like, well, that's not an argument, because you can still nowadays with the apps and stuff, you can put your money in and you can still get it out. If you need it tomorrow, it's fine, just take it out. Like, I think yours is yours might take 24 hours to get out. I can get mine out in an hour.
Yeah.
And supposedly in a more active, well, I guess that's the reason why I can get out an hour. But do you know what I mean? Mine's invested in actual companies. Yours is in a fund. So
yeah, easy in, easy out. But I suppose the point there as well is banks are paying you 0.25% interest, but they're investing your money on your behalf, but they keep all the profit.
Yeah. So that's it. For the majority of people, that's one major issue. If you've got savings in a bank, it's dying down there, and it should be doing something else. It can be in the passive stuff where you earn 5, 7, 10% if it's a global index, maybe, all the way to multiplying your money by 4 if you put it in something that you've made yourself. Yeah. So I particularly want anyone who's young, and by young I mean under the age of 30, to consider it, because I wish I knew this when I was 18, because I definitely would have invested back then. But obviously the flip side of it is pensions, and we've talked recently on the show about how there's still quite a new thing, so you might struggle to find one, but there are increasing number of pension funds who are investing the money for you into the same sort of renewable tech green companies that you probably want to invest in. And they're trying to encourage, the government are trying to encourage the pension companies to make you do that by letting you know what the risks are of the companies that you are actually invested in. Almost like it's, you're invested in old hat companies who are doing nothing. So, that might change. So yeah, there's so many options with pensions, but for me, I still don't actually have one, which is
Do you not?
no, I don't.
Uh, to make you happier, one thing that can help is, yes, pension funds are all kind of old school, but you can have a SIP, which is a self-invested personal pension, where you can buy ETFs.
Yes, so
You
that
just can't take the money out.
yes, so that's exactly what I would, not financial advice, but what I'm doing, or what we'll be doing soon, is that I will be putting money into a SIP. So a SIP is a self-invested pension. That's what it stands for. Sorry, self-invested personal pension, where basically you get to manage where your money goes, which is exactly the same as what we just talked about, whether it's trading, whether it's investing via your ISA, which is what I do most of the time, or whether or not it's pensions. Essentially, it ultimately comes down to the same thing of you saying, I'm going to put my money in this company, this company, and this company, and then sitting back and do nothing, and then coming back in 5-10 years and going, oh, that's nice. So obviously, again, it's not financial advice. You do you. But green investing is definitely on the up. And it's kind of like it's the people having their own voice saying, we want green. We want to do stuff to help the planet. And we're prepared to put our money where our mouth is. And realistically, we'll probably earn a lot more money in the process. So if you think about it, what's cool is, so we vote, or hopefully we do. We make our opinions known just generally via social media or whatever about the sort of things that we want to have. If you invest your money into those companies, you're putting pressure by voting on the government to also invest either money or policy or whatever into helping those companies do better, to do more good. So it's a nice win-win situation there. You get them to invest in the companies that you're also invested in effectively, and then happy days.
Yeah. No, very nice.
And that concludes my rant.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot then. I'm a new investor. I'm a young person who wants to be able to do this. Everything you've said sounds great. How do I start? What should I do? And again, it's not financial advice.
Well, yeah, so that's why I have to be very careful, because I'm not allowed to. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not qualified. I'm just a dude who's stuff out for himself. So I could say what I've done. What I did is, sorry, what?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
What I did is, so every year you're allowed to put in £20,000 into an ISA. So last year or the year before, I put my £20,000 into the ISA that I sort of saved up, and I had a trading 212 account under an ISA wrapper, and that means that I can spend any of that £20,000 on individual stocks or ETFs or anything that trading 212 allows you to buy. I can manage it on my phone at any given moment of any given day, as long as the market is open. That's it really. Any money that you make, because you invested in it from within an ISA, you'd have no tax to pay on those gains. You can only put 20,000 in per year. If you extract it, you can't put it back in. So basically the idea is to put it in there and leave it in there. What I've done is I haven't even added any more to it. I put in that 20,000 that first year. I haven't actually added anything else to it yet. I've just simply worked with what was already in there, and I've grown that up. Because it's been such a crazy year, I'm not going to pretend this is easy. Sorry, I'm not going to pretend it's going to happen like this every year. But in my case, I've over doubled my money in 1 year. And obviously, if I just picked any one, I did it the hard way. I did it by learning all this stuff. and investing in that company, getting that wrong, and investing in company that getting right, whatever, and chopping and changing. I could have just picked any one of those companies that that I mentioned, and I probably would have made 30% on that in the last year. Or if I put Tesla and I just put money in that one, I would now have way more money than I know what to do with. And that would have been the simplest, easiest way of making money in the history of mankind. Literally, I could have put in the full £20,000 back in April last year, and by now that 20,000 would be worth about 175 grand or somewhere in that area. And then I could go and buy a small house. So that would be nice. I didn't do that though, so that's unfortunate.
No, I mean, from a passive investor's perspective, I do think you absolutely lucked out, but you didn't luck out that much as you could have. I suppose if you did stick with it, you would have earned more. But I think from a passive perspective, different amounts of money, but percentage-wise, I did gain about 30%, whereas you doubled your money. So I think you can see the different approaches. My 30% was safer. Your doubling was obviously a lot riskier, but I think it depends on your flavor as an investor. And for me, I'm a bit more safe, you're a bit more risky. So both of us are investing in an ISA, so all our profits are tax-free. So I think that's the important part, that we're playing with our tax-free amount. And if people have that ability, especially if it's in a bank account right now earning zero, like even putting in passive, really, really safe passive, as you mentioned, the all cap, but the sustainable all cap, very safe. You should gain more than a bank will ever give you in interest.
Yep. Now, just to be clear, there's some of the in the UK ones specifically haven't fully recovered from the coronavirus. We seem to be still suppressed more than in America. So money that you'd invested in maybe it's like the TRIG one, the Renewable Infrastructure Group, would still be down from September last year. But again, you're not looking at a 12-month period, you're looking at a 5-year period. You should be anyway. So yes, you are down at the minute, but that would even out, as it were, iron out over the next few years. So if you were down this year, your chances are not guaranteed, but chances are that you'll get a bigger gain the following year, and then it will average out.
What do they always say at the bottom? Past performance is no
indication of future success.
That's the one. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, we could have another pandemic. There could be some other major crisis, but even when there was the worst crisis we've had since the Spanish flu or whatever it was, it still only dropped by, the general market dropped by 30%. Obviously, if you invested in, like the big one at the moment is Carnival Cruise Lines. If you invested in them, you'd be feeling a bit sick right now. But again, over 5 years, chances are they will recover. Carnival also paying pretty good dividends, I believe. So, just, pick decent companies and then leave it alone.
Yeah, I think leaving alone is the important part. I think that's a bit that a lot of people struggle with. So, as you say, because you see it instantly, it's difficult.
As I've said, I've tried to convince members of my family to get in, and there's that barrier. It's like an age, sort of a generation age old barrier that certainly people who are older still see the world as buy sell world. We're not there anymore. We've moved on. I've convinced my sister. I've convinced more recently my dad to have a bit more of a go. It's something that you can do well and something you can do terribly at. But if you just pick decent companies and just leave it alone, you'll do all right.
Yeah.
At least that that if you have put some, that's the biggest thing for me is I don't want, I could choose any. There's a bit where oil price was down, and there was all over YouTube, people were talking about how you can make absolute fortune on oil price right now. If you buy oil now, well, when it was like a month or two ago now, you know, it would by going up so much. But I didn't do it because my philosophy is that I will not profit or invest in any way into any company that I don't believe is doing decent things. So so I didn't invest, and that was an opportunity that I knew was potentially I could, you know, it was a missed opportunity. But it's like, you know, it's the same reason I try to eat less meat. There's you know, I just stick with it, and actually, as I've shown with those top 3 in that global 100, you can do that and still make a decent profit.
Yeah, most definitely. So I think we can all do with that. Like mine's not sustainable. I do need to look at them. But another reason why I'm a passive investor is because I'm a lazy investor. So I don't typically like to collate on my plates. But sure. I probably should.
But yeah, for you, for someone like you could still go, well, actually, okay, fine, but I'll just go with just pick an ETF that's focusing a bit more on those sort of companies.
Yeah, I should probably start moving to ETFs because I'm currently in funds, and I use Vanguard for passive, so that tends to be the lowest fees in the market. So I like them quite well. But yeah, ETFs I haven't really played with it too much. Just typically use the funds.
In some cases, they're kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I suppose they are.
It is, but
yeah, cool. Thank you.
That's it. Done.
Yeah, you convinced me. Hopefully, you've convinced someone else. That's the main thing.
Well, yeah, and it's not, you know, I ain't getting out of it. But I can't stand people putting money in bank accounts. I can't stand banks just getting your money. Just annoys me.
Stop paying bankers. They get enough.
Because they get paid themselves very nice amounts of money, and how do they do it? By investing your money and then paying themselves with it.
Yeah, they can't go bankrupt. We bail them out without tax money as well. Yeah, all in all, poor system.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you invest in some renewable company, I'm sure there's still some guy at the top of that company who's still paying themselves a decent wage, but there's just less of them.
Yeah, maybe it's more righteously earned too. You know, I've done my part of saving the world a little bit. Like, I mean, Elon Musk, he earns a fair bit, I assume. But, you know, maybe rightly so.
I mean, he's usually on record for saying he earns like £1 or something ridiculous. He earns all his money through stock. So, which at the minute, he's doing very, very well because it's all paper money. It's not actual real money until he sells the stock.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Right. Well, unless you've got anything else to add.
Only one thing I did look up the Just Grab company is honest company, not caring company. Close, but not right.
And I've also remembered that it was not Chicago. It was a Seattle company. There was the boat company. It was Seattle.
Makes more sense.
Much earlier in the episode, you've probably forgotten what that was about, but it was there. Right. So that leaves me with nothing else to say other than thank you for watching. Invest safely. Think, educate, and act. And we'll see you next time.